In recent years, people have been talking about the economic crises in different countries because of the global economic situation. The total amount of things we produce globally, which is called global output, has increased a lot since the pandemic started in late 2019. It's expected that this year, the value of all the goods and services produced in the world will exceed $100 trillion for the first time ever. That's 3 times more than what we were producing just 23 years ago in the year 2000. Even though the world's population has grown by 2 billion people, the average person today is twice as well off financially as they were a generation ago. However, not everyone gets the same benefits because inequality increases as wealth grows. Still, life has gotten much better for most people overall, and economists think this will keep improving. But some countries are having economic problems that can hurt millions of people, even though the world's economy looks good in general. In recent times, many developing economies have been facing tough economic challenges. This year alone, we've seen Lebanon, Sri Lanka, and Pakistan struggling with their economies almost collapsing. And there are several other countries going through similar difficulties. It's important to understand why this is happening now, especially when the global economy was in a worse state just a few years ago. So, why are so many economies in danger of collapse? Are there common problems contributing to these economic failures? And can economists find ways to prevent such problems from harming other economies? Advanced economies have advantages over developing ones, while less developed economies often struggle with their economics. In countries like Mali or South Sudan, people rely more on self-sustaining lifestyles and less on the market. They grow their own food, build their own shelters, and provide services within their communities. Money is not as important for trade in these areas, and many survive on less than $2 a day, especially in rural regions. In both developing and advanced economies, people work to make things for the market. This allows specialization and increased production. However, it also means they depend more on the market and can't produce everything they need like in undeveloped economies. Life in developing countries is tough and not very prosperous. But if their economic output drops by 20% in a year, it may not affect people's lives as much as in an economy where most work is market-based and provides their essential needs. On the other hand, advanced economies have many good things that make total economic collapses rare. They have industries that make valuable things for the whole world, so they always have money coming in from other countries. Advanced economies also have high living standards, so skilled workers from all over the world want to come there. They can bring in more workers if they need them by giving visas to skilled people who want higher salaries and better lives. If the job market gets worse, unemployed skilled workers might go back to their home countries instead of becoming a problem for developing economies. Advanced economies can also borrow money at lower interest rates, often from their own rich people. Some advanced economies can even borrow money in their own money instead of foreign money. That means they don't have to worry about exchange rates or getting foreign money to pay back their loans. There have been cases where developing countries faced economic collapses when they were cut off from their source of US dollars. This happened because trade slowed down or US-based institutions withdrew their money to focus on their own economy. Nowadays, this is a widespread problem due to higher interest rates and uncertainty about the future of weakened countries. Big companies hesitate to invest in developing countries like Sri Lanka because they fear economic challenges. Instead, they prefer to invest in government bonds that offer high returns with less risk. This puts more pressure on developing economies as their governments have to offer even higher interest rates to attract investors. Sri Lanka, for example, pays a high interest rate of 24.4% on its 10-year government bonds, but still struggles to attract most investors. Investing in infrastructure that supports industries is vital for any economy. While some utilities can be privatized later on, initially it is the government's responsibility to develop them. Spending on infrastructure should lead to economic growth, generating tax revenue from industrial activities to repay the loans used for the projects. In many countries, activities that people do for themselves are not counted in the official measures of the economy. Even if they were, it would be difficult to accurately record these figures. This can make the economy seem worse than it actually is, and it's not just a problem in developing countries. This can make the economy seem worse than it actually is, and it's not just a problem in developing countries. Even in advanced economies, certain things like cleaning your own home don't contribute to the economy, but cleaning someone else's home for money does. Governments can't just print money to pay for infrastructure projects, especially if they involve international companies that prefer to be paid in widely accepted currencies like US dollars or euros. This is important because Chinese construction companies, for example, may require payment in a world reserve currency. Advanced economies have advantages because they already have a lot of infrastructure in place. They still need to invest, expand, and maintain it, but it's easier, cheaper, and less risky than starting from scratch and relying on industrial activity to generate enough money to repay loans. China's Belt and Road Initiative provided cheap loans for infrastructure projects in developing countries to connect them to China's trade network. While these projects were welcomed, China expected repayment and had control over the projects built. China prioritized trade-enhancing infrastructure, even if other investments would have been more beneficial for the countries involved. Now, China has stopped lending and seeks repayment, becoming a global debt collector. This adds pressure on struggling economies to find funds for loan repayment. Countries can choose projects wisely but face challenges. Democracy, as highlighted by Nobel laureates Douglas North and Robert Fogel, can play a role in decision-making. Most advanced economies operate as democracies, except for oil-rich states. North and Fogel, economic historians, studied the post-revolution period in Europe. Revolutions removed monarchs and established representative governments, leading to the growth of the merchant class and the Industrial Revolution. Democracies allow people to vote, ensuring decisions align with the will of the people. Governments must provide services and opportunities to keep voters satisfied. Advanced economies consult extensively with voters, although implementation may be slower. Governments without accountability are prone to poor execution. The institutions lending billions of dollars to governments worldwide for economic development are not naive. They won't provide loans to an economy unless they believe they will be repaid. Poor economic management, bad investments, and even corruption can hinder national economies and slow down economic growth. However, on their own, they won't cause a complete collapse because lenders won't provide enough funds for countries to be unable to repay their loans. Some economists say that lenders won't give these countries enough room to harm themselves, using a somewhat dark metaphor, but the point is clear. This assumes that everything remains the same, even if the status quo involves substantial debt and poor economic decisions. An economic collapse is like a fire that needs a spark to ignite. The spark in this case is an economic shock, which can either be a supply shock or a demand shock. Supply shocks happen when something unexpected reduces the availability of goods, like a natural disaster destroying factories. Demand shocks occur when people suddenly stop spending due to fear or uncertainty. Both types of shocks can strain the economy, especially if there were existing weaknesses. Shocks can also be positive, like a sudden increase in supply or demand, but they can still cause short-term problems. For example, a sudden increase in housing supply may lower prices, impacting the economy temporarily, even though it's beneficial in the long run. If an economic collapse requires a spark, then the global pandemic and the subsequent economic response were like lightning strikes. However, these events take time to unfold as countries negotiate their debt and seek assistance from international organizations such as the IMF and the World Bank, which aim to prevent economic failures from spreading to other nations. Unfortunately, there is a strong likelihood that we will witness numerous national economic crises in the coming years, as the world adjusts from a turbulent start to a new decade. Despite many of these changes being a net positive moving forward and the world continues to become more economically prosperous as a whole, the benefits of this growth will, as always, be unevenly distributed among different groups. With that said, thank you for watching. Be sure to hit that subscribe button and stay tuned for more. And if you found this content helpful, give the video a like. See you in the next video. Till then, take care.